And welcome to Fight Grind Radio. This is your boy Bootsy. I'm here with Shannon Reid. We're going to talk a little local MMA today. Shannon, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing, man?
I'm busy. I'm tired. But I love talking MMA, so everything's going to be all right. For those of you who were just tuning in before the show, I'm sure you heard the weirdest mix of music you've ever heard. I don't know. I don't choose the music before it goes on. Except on the podcast, you'll hear... You hear the band called Colors from South Korea, who's my boy from Chico. And so if you're hearing that, I definitely picked that music. But I certainly wouldn't have picked Al Green to intro me into fighting, because that man I don't think has ever thrown a punch in his life. God help him if he did. He's too pretty. He shouldn't get punched. But anyway, let's get to talking with our guest, Shannon Reid. And Shannon, I understand you train out of Drysdale's and Fight Capital. Are those the only two places?
Oh, yeah, pretty much. I just do my striking at Fight Capital with Kenneth Rayford. He's been around. He's been in Vegas for years. And obviously jiu-jitsu with Robert Drysdale.
That's probably a good idea. Yeah.
I mean...
You don't do a lot of the striking with Drysdale and then go over to Fight Capital for the jiu-jitsu?
Don't overlook Drysdale, man. He's got...
Well, I don't overlook
punches.
I don't overlook anyone at my 140-pound frame. That's not something I do. But, it makes more sense to do a little gi and no gi jiu-jitsu with Drysdale.
Yeah, I do all my wrestling, all my grappling at Drysdale's. I do some striking there too. There's some people I work with, but mostly the dude that does my mitt work and my foundation is Kenneth Rayford at Fight Capital. And
where do you spend an equal amount of time at both, or are you someone that likes to do more ground or more stand-up?
I don't really like to do either or more of the other. That doesn't make sense.
You don't like to focus on one more than the other?
Yeah, I try not to. I mean, as much as I love to stand and trade, I realize that most fights end up on the ground.
Right. Also, longevity of career usually helps if you get on the ground a little more often.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing that. I mean, I don't know. Actually, most of my injuries have wound up on the ground, surprisingly enough. Most of my black eyes and bloody noses are from people cross-facing me. And, being a little aggro on the ground, but...
Right. Anyone that hasn't experienced a crossface are usually the people that say that you don't get injured on the ground. And as soon as you feel a crossface, that's when you know the ground game is just as painful as any stand-up game.
Exactly.
So give us an idea. You're the first person we have had in from Drysdale's. Give us an idea of the atmosphere of that gym.
Oh, Drysdale's. You walk in... It's kind of like family there, man. I mean, I've only been there since February, but every time I walk in there, always greeted with a smile. Everybody's real cool. Everybody gets along real good. There's really no ego. It doesn't matter whether you're a white belt or a black belt. Everybody's real eager to make each other better, even if it's just little things. I love it there. It's a very humble training atmosphere. I've been through some big gyms. I'm not dissing any other gym or anywhere else, but...
Right.
I mean, nothing's really forced on you, and the attention to detail is really what stood out to me as far as, some of the techniques they show and the knowledge. The attention to details, and it's a lot of the little things that really, things take care of the big things.
Right, so you'd say they're kind of a teach-first gym where you're learning your skills, your details first, and then you try to apply them later?
Yeah, and that's exactly how it is, and I find myself often hitting a lot of the stuff that we just learned, It might not be that night, but it might be a week later. We'll always do live rolling, obviously.
Right.
You can't, you can never drill too much, but also, there comes a point where it's like, okay, you got to see how this works in a practical application.
Right.
And they're really good about pairing up more advanced people with some of the less advanced people, and then, switching it around and making sure that we're always challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves.
Right. And I know you're getting ready for a Tuff-N-Uff fight, correct?
Yes, sir.
And where are you at as far as your camp? Do you start your heavy camp like 6 or 7 weeks in?
I'm smack dab in the middle of it. Yeah, I'm right in the thick of it right now. I'm doing my 2-a-days.
super fun then.
Oh, yeah. Life's good. I had my little nap before I came over here.
How many hours do you put in per day once you're in the heat of it here?
It just depends. On my days off, I'll usually spend at least 2 hours in the morning and usually 2 to 3 hours at night.
Mm-hmm.
I try and it just depends. I mean, longer doesn't always equal better.
Right.
But as far as when it comes to like the jiu-jitsu, I mean, a good solid 2 hours usually, and the sparring will at least go 5 rounds.
Okay.
Usually, and 5 rounds of mitts, 5 rounds of this, 5 rounds of that. Just getting that cardio on point and
really enjoying life at that point. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, there's nothing.
It's nothing better.
Last round of mitts is always the funnest. Ask anyone.
Yeah, that's true. And you fight at 145, or are you doing 135?
I float. This fight's at 145. I fought at 135. It just depends on where the opportunities are presenting themselves.
Right. Are you someone that likes to do the weight cut, or?
Well,
I mean,
no
one likes it as far as like the whole grind of it, but some people like the challenge of trying to get down in weight. Are you somebody that would rather just fight? You wish everyone would just stay at their freaking walking weight and fight it out, or do you like the challenge of trying to cut down?
That's not one challenge I really enjoy. I really don't like starving myself. I'm a fat kid, and holidays are right around the corner, and
yeah, I was wondering about that for fighters. Is you got the weigh-ins on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Which has got to be the worst when you're cutting weight.
I've thought about that. That was one of the first things that I noticed when I was marking my calendar was, Thanksgiving.
Well, I know that they had, it's funny because I heard the Tuff-N-Uff brass talking about, well, we'll do the weigh-ins early so that people can go home and eat dinner. But I don't think they understand how the cut affects you after, when you're done. It's not like you just go and eat whatever you want and eat a lot of food and just feel great all of a sudden.
I can't. I mean, a good Thanksgiving dinner, you're wearing your fat kid pants a size too big, and you still got to unbutton it, and you can't be doing that the night before a fight. I mean, you can, but
it's not a good idea.
I wouldn't recommend, no.
Well, my problem was always that once because I had to drink a lot of water, I'd go down to 125, and I'm tall for that.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would have to drink so much water and be pounding water and Gatorade to get the electrolytes in, and so I wasn't really hungry. I was just hurting all over from trying to rehydrate.
It's always the thirst, man. The thirst is worse than the hunger.
The idea of eating a huge Thanksgiving meal while trying to down water and trying to get yourself back sounds more painful than it does awesome.
It really does. I'm gonna do a little small plate is what I've compromised myself to, because I mean I gotta have a little bit of Thanksgiving on.
This is how you know fighters though, is that you think a month in advance about how you're gonna eat your food when you're done. It's like someone in prison who's saying, when I get out, this is the first thing I'm gonna do.
I've made my bucket list already. I mean. I know I'm going to go to 135 after this fight, so I'm trying not to go too overboard with this whole food thing, especially after the fight. But I've definitely got, I'll have a little bit of turkey, a little bit of cranberry sauce, a little bit of pumpkin.
Right. Are you somebody that likes to, barring injuries that keep you from fighting, do you like to try to fight as consistently as possible? Do you have a certain flow and time that you like to put in between?
If I could, I like at least 6 to 8 weeks to get ready for a fight. I've taken fights on shorter notice than that, but somehow or other something always happens to where it doesn't work out anyway. So, but I'll take fights on short notice as long as it's not a huge weight cut. If it's to 135, then I don't like taking fights on real short notice to 135. Obviously, I mean, making that weight is already hard enough for me. I don't need the extra. But like I said, after this, I'm definitely going to stay at 135, especially if I'm going to go pro and just I have no business at 145 with my frame. I'm short.
Right. Yeah, that's how I always felt when I started out in 2002 or 2003, and there weren't lower weight classes. And lightweight for me was already my body doesn't build mass. I stay lean, so it was always I felt like, well, why don't they have extra weight classes? Because I am in trouble with this frame. Yeah. And then I stopped doing it around 2007, which is when they added in the lower weights, so I picked the wrong time. I just wanted to get beat up by giant people for 4 years, and then that was it.
Well, you could have just gone to prison, I mean.
Yeah, I wouldn't do well there.
No?
Yeah, I was too pretty, and I like to try to solve problems, so that doesn't work out too well.
I don't know, I mean, you could be a jailhouse lawyer. They do pretty good in there.
Yeah, I'd do that. I'd get stabbed at some point. I always thought that was always what would happen to me.
Shanked.
Yeah, everyone's always worried about the other stuff that goes on there. I was like, I run my mouth at the worst times, and like that's already a problem in regular life.
Right.
I'm terrible if there's like rules involved of respect and things. That's not.
Oh man.
That's not my world. I grew up in a world of stand-up comedy. You say everything. You let it all out there. But yeah, so. with your fight, I know you're fighting someone who has a pretty extensive amateur career.
Yeah.
What's your record at?
I'm 3-1.
Yeah, so it's not like this is a new fight for you, but she's at, 11 fights now, I think? So she has, and she's coming from Ohio, right? Or somewhere Midwest.
Ohio, yes,
so
sir.
Are you able to get any sort of video on her and be able to see what she does?
I've watched a little. I was actually front row at her last fight because I was supposed to fight that night.
All right.
And I didn't because my opponent was 10 pounds overweight. Anyway.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah, that whole thing. And then, no, I watched her last fight, and then I've watched a little bit of tape. I'm kind of letting my coaches do that because, honestly, I'm kind of stupid, and I'm not good at picking apart those kind of things, so I'll let my coaches say, and then come to me and say, okay, well, this is what we see here, and this is what we see there. But from what I can see, she's all around. I mean, she's decent on her feet. She's decent on the ground. Jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, just from my own analysis, I expect it to be a good fight. I mean, she's got an extensive amateur career. I mean, I haven't really looked at who she's fought.
Right. Well, at amateur, it's hard to know anyway.
It's really hard to gauge talent and, skill set wise. I mean, I fought some girls that really probably had no business fighting.
Right.
And I fought some girls that, probably could do well at pro at any level. I mean, it's really hard to gauge at that level.
Is there something to just not having to worry about your opponent where you get to focus on yourself, or are you someone that would rather?
That's exactly what I do. I mean, I don't spend my time worrying about what she's doing because I have no control over that.
Right.
I can't control what she's doing with her time right now, whether she's, stuffing face with Oreos or doing her road work or doing her mitt work. I can't be concerned with that.
Right.
I only worry about me. The fight is with me. That's the biggest war. That's all I'm fighting is me.
Right. And how long do you think you'll stay at amateur before you start looking at pro shows?
I'm getting old, man. I need to. I mean, I don't want an 11. I'm not dissing her at all by any means, but I don't want an 11 fight amateur career. This isn't boxing.
Right.
I've been training for a long.
No offense to the Mayweather camp out there.
No offense to anyone. No offense to anyone. This is just me. I'm getting old, and I need to go pro.
Right.
Just start making money. I'm sick of fighting for scraps.
Right. And you're someone that you're at the right weight class range to be looking at UFC. Is Invicta another one that you're looking at?
I would love an opportunity with Invicta. I know World Series of Fighting just opened up a bantamweight division.
Yes, they did.
I'm very interested in
that.
And
since they're going to Japan, they talked about going to Japan. There's going to probably be a lot of opportunity there.
That's my dream is to fight in Japan. That is my Genki Sudo is one of my all-time favorite fighters.
We got to talk a little old school fighting pretty soon. Then.
Yes.
Yeah, because we can talk all day about guys
Genki
like Genki.
Sudo, man. That is, I showed my friends Brandon and Victoria. They had never heard of him, and they're huge fans of old school fighting. And so I showed them a highlight reel of Genki Sudo, and they had no idea this guy even existed, man. That's my dream to fight in Japan.
He was one of the first guys I ever watched, or back in the day of 2002 to 4, there were only highlight videos you could find of people, and I would scour for it. And Genki Sudo was one of those guys that did that paradigm shift for me. When I went, you can fight really interesting ways and still be effective. You don't have to be just the standard wrestler, boxer, tough guy. You can be fluid. You can have interesting motion. You can break rules, and you can still be a badass.
Have fun.
Yeah, he did.
This is fun.
He was the original Sexyama and Sakuraba style, and Sakuraba was around at the same time, but nobody really knew who he was. Yeah. But he came in as the good-looking Asian guy that all the women loved in Asia, a huge superstar, and then just was kind of a ridiculous fighter at the same time that could just trounce anybody who wasn't at the very tip top.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate the injuries he had. We're getting way out. This is what I do. Is I start musing about the old days.
Oh my God! I know the old days.
He had the unfortunate back injuries, which then got in the way, which kills me. I mean, you see guys like Sakuraba where maybe they stay around too long, and then the other side, Genki, you just wish there were 3 more years.
I constantly I understand why he went out and wanted to do the whole music thing, and
it's a big thing over there. That
exactly,
they keep doing.
He was huge. He's still huge over there. He's a huge star over there, but. I just wonder, what if he didn't retire when he did and just kept going on? Because he was still, I believe he lost his last fight, didn't he?
I believe so.
But it wasn't any, I think he lost to Kid Yamamoto, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm going to be looking that up right now,
I'm
so
pretty
tell
sure.
your story and then
Pretty sure, but, you always wonder, I mean, nobody knows he even fought in the UFC. I mean, he fought good guys in the UFC.
He did.
And he won.
Yeah, you hear about that a lot. And he's one of those guys, along with Kid Yamamoto, that a lot of people don't respect because of the fact that they kind of came in too early. both of them, Yamamoto came into the UFC too late after being in too early beforehand. Like, he missed the boat on both sides.
Right.
And then Genki, like you said, he had other interests of being a superstar.
Right.
And that kind of got in the way. It says on his record he actually had 2 more fights after the Yamamoto one against nobodies and beat them up.
Oh, okay.
And so, but he didn't have the last big fight he had was against Kid Yamamoto. Both of those guys, for anyone that's listening, just look up highlights of both of those men, Kid Yamamoto and Genki Sudo, and you'll see some pretty amazing early day fighters.
Wow, the grappling Genki Sudo, and
I always liked his kickboxing matches where he'd turn his back on people and throw those spinning. I used to do that for fun in training just because of that weird, like...
Or you ever just do, like, the jerkin, the showboating.
Yeah, the stutter step shoulder jerk. It's one of the best moves to throw, especially if you know you're better than someone in sparring, just to become Genki Sudo.
For a second, and they just look at you like, what in the bloody hell?
Do the robot dance and all that stuff.
Yeah, or
it's
the
way
side,
to go.
exactly.
And then when you get mad and you are still better than that person, start doing the Diaz and just put your arms out and yell at them a lot and slap them sometimes.
I don't ever do that. It's fine. Like, sometimes I'll just goof around, but that's what I'm saying. Like, this is supposed to be fun. It's life is too short to do shit that you... I don't know if I'm supposed to...
Yeah, it's all right.
Life is too short to not do stuff that you don't want to do, and this is fun to me. I mean... The fight's the fun part, and I'm never not going to, have fun with it. And you can call it disrespectful if I'm smiling or, doing a little dance. I'm not disrespecting you. I'm having fun with this, This is my dream.
And for people that don't know, what's your day-to-day job?
I'm a corrections officer.
So that's, because people always ask me, I got the guys in the studio who ask me, for both men and women, they wonder... how did they not have nerves doing that kind of stuff? You're a good example of someone who, you wouldn't expect you to have nerves going into a fight because you're already dealing with, rough situations anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the facility I work at now, I don't want to, say where or when, but the facility I'm at now is pretty chill. Mm-hmm. There really isn't a lot going on there. I mean, I came from Arizona, and... There were some pretty stressful situations in Arizona. It was at the men's yard, and when you're faced with 300 inmates refusing a lockdown, or 300 inmates that are pissed at you, and I mean, there's some. I mean, I've been blessed. I haven't been seriously hurt, or there's been some pretty grave situations I've been in that I'm thankful I walked out of my own power, and so did all my buddies. And so I mean. Yeah, this fight's what you're gonna punch me in the face. That's great. You don't have a shank.
Right.
You're not gonna hold me hostage for I don't have to worry about some of the more bigger things in life.
Right. Do you think it gives you a bit of an advantage though, where you're not dealing with the same nerves as other people might have to deal with? I mean, clearly they're different situations, but just the fact that an adrenaline rush in a fight is not going to be as intense as where you think your life is on the line.
Right. Exactly. I don't know if it would give me an advantage. Everybody kind of deals with it their own way. Mm-hmm. I like to relax. I just like to relax, and yeah, this is fun. And I would say that it maybe does give me. I don't really think about any of those situations right before the fight. I'm obviously just like water and clearing my head and letting it flow.
So you do that work full-time? Is that a full-time job?
Full-time job.
So how's the balancing act of trying to do that, and especially when a fight's coming up? You're putting in a lot of time. So I'm guessing the rest of the time you sleep, right? That's pretty much it.
I try and sleep when I can. I'm lucky. Every job that I've worked, I mean, because I worked at Hard Rock before. I worked for the state of Nevada, and then before Hard Rock when I was in Arizona. I've been lucky that everywhere I've gone, when they find out I'm fighting and I need time off, because I usually try not to take too much time off to put burden on other people. With this fight, I'll be at work the next day, barring horrific visit to the hospital where I'm incapacitated, and I don't really expect that. I mean, I'm not stupid. The only thing I'm gonna be overnight in the hospital for is if I don't tap in time to something stupid, but I mean that's not going to happen as
you're supposed to say. Or if you break your hands on her face, that's what.
No, that's happened. I've broken my hand before. I broke my hand in my January fight and go to work the next day. What do you want? I mean, obviously I'm not going to throw that punch, but that's not going to stop me from going to another officer's aid if they need me or anything. Having a busted up face. That's not going to stop me. I mean, that didn't stop me the night before fighting. Why is that going to stop me the next day if I need to hold down for one of my officers. So I mean,
right. And would you say that the mental or physical grind is the harder part when you're doing this full-time work and training?
Probably the physical. Mentally, I mean, I try and make it fun. I've got really good training partners that, you know, a lot of them have full-time jobs too, and I got a couple right now that are in fight camp. They got fights real close to mine, so we're going through the same things together, and we try and make it fun. We make it goofy. I mean, we take it very serious.
Right.
It's obviously serious, but at the same time, it helps when you've got really good training partners that, you know, make it easy for you. There's nothing shittier than having a training partner that you don't really want to train with, but you really don't have a choice because
or someone that's half-assing it and doesn't care.
Yeah, there's nothing better when you find somebody that pushes you and you push them back, and you're kind of at that same understanding.
I think you're the first fighter I've asked that actually said the physical's harder than the mental.
Yeah?
Most people I find say the mental's harder.
Really?
And granted, a lot of the people I'm talking to are usually like 18 to 22. When I'm talking to, it's the young amateurs who are just showing up.
Yeah.
So I think it's a new thing for them to have to take on all that responsibility. But everyone I've asked that I can recall from memory so far, outside of people like Modafferi or Paijiao, who, like, those guys, they've been doing it so long, their body just aches. So physical is obviously the hardest for them.
Obviously physical.
But everybody else talks about the emotional and mental, and I think it's because the age thing, where it's new. They're just coming out of having to have everything done for them or having people that are taking care of them, and now they not only have work, but they have to fight, and people are punching them, and there's tough people everywhere.
Right.
So it becomes a more difficult challenge than they expected.
Right.
That's my hypothesis on that.
I mean, there's emotion. The only emotion, and any other fighter will attest to this, the only emotion I'm not saying the only one during fight camp. I mean, there's going to be times where I'm just like, fuck this. I'm sick of training. I just want to fight already. And everybody gets to that point where they're just fed up, and they're just sick of thinking about it. They're sick of obsessing over it, but I kind of look at the bright side. I'm like, you know what, man? I'm in Las Vegas, living my dream. This is what I quit my job in Arizona. This is what I left everything behind in Arizona to do. I'm living my dream. This is freaking awesome.
Right.
I'm not going to complain. I'm going to have a positive attitude today. And the only emotion I really feel is just passion. Like, this is what is driving me to, you know, this is what I gave up everything for. I've got to do this with passion and purpose, with speed and intensity. The only time I really get bitchy is during weight cut. That's the job.
Well, that's
the weight cut.
Nobody's in a good mood.
Right.
One of the things I hate is trying to do interviews right around the fight times for people, because they can't help it. They just don't want to talk about stuff. They don't want to deal with you, and you can't blame them. But at the same time, you got to get some words in, and it's so hard for them to deal with. I had to interview Chris Cyborg.
Oh, Jesus.
A day before her fight. That was not fun, because she's professional enough where she's like, she just told us up front, she's like, I want to go into my room, but what do you need? And I went, all right, fair enough. I just threw out 3 questions, and I left. 2 poor bastards sat there and kept trying to talk to her, and I think they got the brunt of her wrath.
Yeah.
As far as verbally, which a lot of Portuguese came out all of a sudden, so you know it wasn't nice. But that's, I mean, you gotta, it's the tough part of doing press, where you have to talk to them.
Right.
But you know that they don't want, if you're smart, some writers out there, they like the sport as casual fans or just people doing their job. I'm someone that has been around fighters long enough, like at least 2 weeks before even is when you start being real tiptoey around people who are doing their weight cuts, because they're tired, like you said, tired of obsessing over it. Tired of thinking about what they want to do, tired of just having to pass up good meals all the time.
Yeah.
And it becomes a real sketchy area to start to talk to people in. I mean, all fighters, I haven't run into a fighter outside of Tito Ortiz who's been a jerk, but, and he wasn't even weight cutting. He's just kind of rude.
Oh.
But other than that, most people are good about, you know, that they have a pretty short temper because they're tired and they're cutting weight, but they're willing to talk because they know it's part of the gig.
Yeah, exactly.
So it seems to work out that way, but it's always funny. Like, that's why when you contacted me, I was glad we got this in early, because I would have been trying to get a hold of you to come in and do that kind of stuff like 2 or 3 weeks before. That's when it starts to get a little shady. Yeah,
145 isn't too bad. If it was 135,
yeah, well, that's true.
I mean, that's what's nice is I think my opponent Jessica, she fights at 135 also. She floats back and forth too. So I mean, I'm not. Yeah. That's what I like about this amateur gig is I really don't think these amateur fighters should be cutting any more than 10 to 15 pounds to be making weight anyway. Because honestly, why are you doing this to your body, to your liver, to your kidneys, to God knows what? Why are you doing this for scraps? Let's be real. You're doing this for scraps. You're not making any kind of. I mean, unless you got some kind of sponsoring you to fight amateur that I don't know about, and if you do, let me know because I want to talk to them. But
well, that's part of the reason for this show is to try to get amateurs a little bit of scratch.
Yeah, but I mean, why do this for pennies on the dollar?
Yeah.
You know?
I hear you. Well, and I'm a big fan of getting rid of weight cutting in general, as far as the intense weight cutting, where you see guys like Gleason Tebow who's cutting like 40 pounds somehow.
Yeah, that's
I have
ridiculous.
no idea how he's doing it.
That's crazy, man. I can't even.
And I don't like it for the health reasons, and I don't like it because since everyone's doing it, why don't you just all stay at the weight? You see guys like Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva who were both cutting down to middleweight. Mm-hmm. They're both around 220 walking around. Just fight each other at 220. Like, what's the point? Because I'd rather see you both be way more energetic and not be so drawn out.
Yeah.
Especially Chael. I know you're a fan of Chael. You see him at those weigh-ins at 185. Looks like a zombie.
He looks miserable.
A dapper zombie, but a zombie nonetheless.
Yeah.
And thank God he doesn't even really talk during those, when he's in his cut.
Yeah.
He stays away from jabbing like he usually does with his voice.
Maybe it's the thirst, because honestly, I'm the same way. Like, when I get down to the nitty-gritty and I'm cutting 20, because when I fought 135, I cut like 22 pounds in like 2 days. It was just ridiculous. It was bad.
God.
And it's not that I didn't want to talk. I had a lot to say. And a lot of it wasn't very nice, so it's probably good that I couldn't talk. However, just the thirst was so intense, like my mouth could not form words. There was no moisture in my mouth. There was no saliva to form words.
Well, and there's no brain synapses firing in that vocal section of the brain.
Probably that too.
Yeah, you're losing all those electrolytes doing that, so it can't be any good. And your last fight that you were supposed to do that didn't happen, was that supposed to be at 135?
That was 145.
Oh, okay. So I was gonna say if you had done it, you were liable to fight her out in the crowd. If it had been 135.
I would have been hot. I mean, that's why I wasn't too stressed out about. Okay, whatever. It's 145.
Right.
You probably would have walked in at 155, 160 anyway.
Right.
Big deal, but.
Yeah, we had at the last show, the Knockout Cancer benefit show.
Yeah.
A guy just didn't show up after weighing in. Like, just didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, I heard about that dude.
Which was weird. And I've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, but not enough people listen to this, so I'll just tell it again. Where I told Barry and Jeff that he wasn't going to show up. And they were like, no, he said he'll be fine. But he had come up to me after he weighed in and said, do you have any advice on fighting? Like, that was literally his question. And I went, oh, no, this isn't going to work. Like, you're not going to make it. And I tried to be nice and be like, just don't turn your back on your opponent and, make sure that you fight brave. Like, that's all you got to do.
Throw it.
Yeah, and he was a specimen of a human. Like, it looked like he could handle himself, if in no other reason, just out of sheer athleticism.
Yeah.
If, he wasn't going against someone who was like a jiu-jitsu black belt that would just be able to flow like water and take him out.
Yeah.
If he had used his strength, he would have at least had a chance. But when you have the mentality of, oh, now what do I do that the moment's here, you're probably not going to even show up, and he didn't. And so he just didn't make it. But how prevalent is that, have you seen with amateur fighters, where they just don't show or decide they can't do it?
I've had so many no-shows, man. I'm sick of it.
Really?
I'm so sick of no-shows, or this came up. If I cancel on a fight, and I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, I canceled on a fight in, was it August? It was supposed to be in August. I was supposed to fight Lerna Markovic for WFC in Laughlin, and I canceled, I think, a month and a half before. Mm-hmm. And it was, I couldn't get the time off. I couldn't get the day off.
Well, in a month and a half is a good amount of time.
That's my point, is, give your opponent's cutting weight, your opponent's thinking about you, your opponent's training for you. Give them a little bit of respect. But, yeah, I've had several no-shows. And you know what? Maybe put Tuff-N-Uff up a little bit. Tuff-N-Uff's been the only promotion to take care of me when something like that happened. Mm-hmm. I'm not dissing any other promotion I've fought for, but that's happened to me before where I've sold.
It goes out of their way a lot of the time.
They really do. I mean, I've sold 50-something tickets, and all my friends are coming out, and my opponent doesn't show up to weigh-ins or doesn't show up the next day. And sorry about your luck. Your people aren't getting refunds. Here's a ticket. Here, you can have an extra ticket. Don't spend it all in one place. Yeah, thanks, dude. No, but Tuff-N-Uff, rest in peace, Barry. He really took care of me, man. He gave me as many front. He called me right back. He's like, "How many front row seats do you want?" And I was just baffled. I was like, "What?" I was like, "Hold on a second." And then I called my coach in Arizona. I was like, "He said we're getting front row seats, man." He's like, tell him 12. And I was like, I'm not telling him 12. What do we need 12 for? We don't even have 12 people.
Barry would have done it, though.
He would have.
Barry would have given you 20.
And I was like, can I have 6? He's like, 6, sure. Is that all you need? And he pulled out his freaking wallet and gave me a $100 bill and was like, I'm sorry about your trouble, man. And I was like, wow.
They're both of them, Jeff and Barry, are great guys, and I really hope that Jeff's able to. I mean, everyone would understand if he has to step away from the company for a while, or if he's just not really involved like he used to be. But Jeff is the same way. Where those two together were such a great duo to have as owning a company.
I was just blown away, yeah.
Yeah, and that's been a tough situation. I only got to know them. I talked about it on a podcast here where I just sat in by myself and talked about my experience with them. So apologies to anyone that listened to that whole hour of that and is now about to hear some of it again. But I got here in August. That's when I moved here.
Okay.
And they were some of the first people I talked to, and immediately were just like, how can we help you? Like, with what you're doing? Like, what can we do to help your site and to help your things? It wasn't, what did we get out of it? They didn't ask for anything. It was immediately like, oh, you like fighting? Oh, you care about amateurs? What can we do? Like, let's help you out quickly. And so I was in meetings with them immediately. I was talking with them about, all the different things I was trying to do. They were trying to find any way they could help out, whether it was contacting sponsors or helping me with sponsoring the site themselves.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tough one with Barry not being there anymore. I'm hoping Jeff is still able to, confide it in himself to keep being as involved as he was, because he's, the other side of that same coin. They work hard to make sure everyone's happy, especially at the amateur level. It's going to be terrible if that can't, persist, if they don't keep it going.
Yeah, Tuff-N-Uff has really put so many pros on the map, and I would hate to see the premier amateur organization. I mean, even UFC has said, we don't support amateur fighting, but when UFC Expo was in town in the summer, they helped promote the Tuff-N-Uff fights that weekend.
Right.
I mean, that's...
And that Tuff-N-Uff's a big deal, and all of the organizations, I think outside of Bleacher Report, pretty much every sports MMA site put up something about Barry.
Right.
Because he's been involved for so long in it. I don't think people understand how long the brothers have been involved in it, but since 2004 is when it was officially going.
They have, yeah.
And so it's a decade of making sure amateurs are getting pretty much a professional experience. I like to ask fighters about that too. How is it that when you're an amateur, do you think it's a big benefit getting out there in front of that many people with all the lights? Do you think that helps get ready for the pro?
For sure. If you've never been in front of people before, I mean, there's always good little baby steps towards that if you're not comfortable doing that. If maybe trying some grappling tournaments first and getting, believe it or not, that'll help get some of your nerves out of the way. Sorry, I'm playing with your coin.
Fiddling
I'm playing
coins.
heads or tails, deciding what I'm going to do with you. No, I'm just joking. It's the Day of the Dead. I don't know. But, doing grappling tournaments and then maybe doing smaller shows. That's what I did. My first fight was a smaller show out in Lake Havasu.
Oh, so yeah, big times.
It was all spring break madness with,
right.
America, all the drunk college kids from California and Phoenix and God knows where coming out to Havasu to see everything but fighting. And here we were fighting right there by the river for, I think it was Rage in the Cage came down. And
right.
Yeah, that was interesting. Fighting in
And when
Havasu.
you were at the Tuff-N-Uff shows, how many people? Because I've seen it where they've had around 700 people for one of the shows, which I would imagine is pretty daunting if you're new to the sport. And even if you've only just done grappling tournaments, that's a lot of people to be in front of for your first few fights, I would imagine.
It is. I never really thought about that. I mean, I thought about the crowd because
before and after is when you notice the crowd. I imagine when you're going in there, you're not paying attention to the crowd at all.
Actually, one of my fights, my coach Jamie, he's really good with the mental warfare, and maybe that's why I don't worry about the mentality so much. Is he he doesn't think for me per se, but he actually took me out, and it was it was a hometown fight, and he took me out to the crowd and he walked me around. It was one of the first fights, and he was pointing to some sloppy kid that's never fought, like the kid that was asking you for fighting tips.
Right.
It was probably one of those kids in there just, throwing bombs with his chin up and doing the Vanderlei Silva windmill of...
Which only Vanderlei can do.
Don't ever do it unless you're Vanderlei. Vanderlei can do it. But, and he was just like, you fight better than that. You're going to put on a really good show. Look at all these people that came out to see you.
Right.
And, you know, we just walked the crowd, and then we walked to another section, and then he'd, you know, whisper more in my ear, this, and this. And it was just really cool. Like, he's never done it again because I don't need it anymore. But he could tell I was kind of it was right after my knockout loss. My one loss was a knockout loss, and I was kind of, I think I let the crowd get to me a little bit that time. And then ever since then, the crowd disappeared, and all I could hear was him, and it's just kind of been like that ever since.
Yeah, and I've seen, I was in the Syndicate locker room. They, for some reason, like, their whole team was in that locker room, which I think helps their fighters a lot. But having that support group, is that important to you to go into? I mean, I imagine you're someone who's like, I can do it on my own if nobody's around.
No, I can't.
Oh,
there's no way I could do this on my. There's no way I could do any of this on my own. I try and keep a small circle. I don't know. I'm not saying I don't trust a lot of people, but I know a lot of people don't talk to me for the right reasons, or if, you know, there's. But I keep a small circle, and I like it like that. The people that train with me and coach me, I'll always be loyal to Jamie. He lives in Arizona now, but he still corners me. He's just my guy, and but having that small tight knit circle definitely helps. I mean, because, you know, I think Pat Barry said it in that documentary with Showtime from like 2010 when they did True Life on MTV.
Right.
Pat Barry said, "You're not just fighting him; you're fighting everybody in that corner. You're fighting."
Right.
And that's kind of how it is. Cause
Pat Barry is someone I need to get into this. Like, I need to find that man. And he's one of the best voices for the sport.
He really is.
For fighters especially. He's such a good voice for the sport. And he's articulate enough without being over the top, like, obnoxiously so.
Oh, yeah.
When I get into talking about, you know, how fighters need to be respected, I bring in my stupid, like, philosophy degree jargon bullshit that nobody wants to hear. And Pat Barry knows how to make it just real passionate, but to the point, and gets it done, where everyone can understand what he's talking about and why you should care.
Exactly. Well, he'll make you care.
That's true.
He's just got that kind of personality.
Yeah.
Like, if you give a shit, it doesn't care. It doesn't matter if he's talking about, you know, his new pet dog or the paint on the wall. Like, he's gonna make you believe it. He's just a very passionate person. I'm a big fan of Pat Barry.
Yeah, and I love watching him. I love watching his girlfriend Rose fight in her shows. I'm glad people are starting to know her name and not just calling her Pat Barry's girlfriend, because that's what it was for like her first couple of years when she was getting ready to go into Invicta. But man, watching her fight is so much fun because it's that same crazy manic passion that both of them have. And that's a scary duo in general because they just couldn't look more different. But they have that same, like, their emotional stability and then ability to go completely manic when they need to is such a fun thing to watch with both of them.
Yeah.
Which can only come from that passion for this. But, like, they just love fighting. That's all they care about.
Exactly. I think a lot of fighters just ride that line, and sometimes some of the better ones or some of the more entertaining ones aren't afraid to kind of cross over that line sometimes.
Right, yeah. Well, and if you need someone to cross the line, Pat Barry's the guy that's going to do it.
I love it.
Honestly.
I love it.
That's one of my favorite things I've seen on the entire internet has been Pat Barry standing up on a chair and yelling at people who are disrespecting, I think they were flyweights fighting at the time.
Oh, and they were booing them? Yeah.
Yeah, and there were people in the crowd booing, and Pat Barry stands up and, like, doesn't just yell at them, but explains to them why they should care. Yeah. And it's just like pretty much like a teacher who's scolding school children.
That's exactly how he is.
Just explaining, look, this is what these people are putting in work, and just yelling. And of course, it's Pat Barry. You'd expect him just to throw a chair. Like, if you don't know who he is, you would think he's just going to go beat people up and be a meathead.
Right.
But instead, he gets passionate and a little choked up and a little upset.
Exactly.
Which is one of the best things to see. And I love that video. Anyone who hasn't seen that, just look up Pat Barry yells at fans or hecklers or something like that.
And that's what's great. That's what's great about him is he's not being some, you know, he's not putting on a mask. Or, I mean, everybody has a mask. You're a philosophy major. Everybody has a mask or a front that they put on.
Right.
And I feel like his is, you know, he's not scared or thinks it's taboo to shut down hecklers. Right. On his Instagram, on his Twitter, he doesn't give a shit. If you disrespect him or if you say something stupid, he's going to call you out. Like, he called out this dude trying to talk shit, saying he's going to beat him up in the gym. So he kept
That's
messaging.
crazy. That's a troll. That's not a real. That has to be someone who's just had too much to drink or was bored and wanted to piss off Pat Barry.
Kept messaging him on Facebook and then posting pictures on it of the dude, and then all of Pat Barry's fans went. I mean, I didn't feel bad for the dude because you got to come and you open your mouth.
Yeah. Well, anyone who doesn't know what Pat Barry looks like, they should probably look him up because if you take that and then think about trying to call this guy out, because it's scary. I don't know if you ever saw him doing it was standing bench presses where he literally leaned backwards and like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
It was
like
great. It
whatever.
scared the crap out of me. I couldn't
Or when he
watch
does
it
deadlifts
fully.
with his girlfriend on his shoulders, like
Yeah,
whatever.
he's a weird. I'm glad we don't live in the Viking days. People like him and Vanderlei Silva are two people that would have been owning this whole area.
They probably would have been kings, yeah.
Although I would have. I hope that if they ever do a fighters union or anything that involves, fighters trying to work together to get better pay, Pat Barry's the guy you'd want to be. I don't know if he could run it, but he'd be the voice of it.
He could rep, yeah.
Because he would be a great guy to have out there. Because he's not. First of all, he's not going to let people try to control it in a way that he doesn't like. If he's voicing an opinion, it's his opinion because he cares, which is probably the most important part. But secondly, he's not going to be afraid to say whatever he needs to say.
Do you think fighters need a union?
That's a hard one. I don't like unions in general, how they're set up these days, but I love the idea of the union, and I think that there's a way you could do it, where you could set it up where fighters pretty much work together to create a fairer balance of pay, without there being that 1950s to 1980s structure of a union, which has been so screwed at this point. It just doesn't work anymore, and it makes you look like bad guys essentially. But makes the company look good. But
with the pressure to perform and the pressure to put on exciting fights, do you think creating a union, making it more of a standardized rate of pay, do you think that would take some of that pressure off, and then maybe we'd have more boring fights? Because I mean, what's on the line if like somebody like Diego Sanchez, one of my all-time favorites besides Genki Sudo, what would stop Diego Sanchez? I mean, he's a warrior. He's gonna fight the way he fights no matter what.
Right.
But just for example, someone like him, if he knows there's going to be incentive to finish or to put on fight of the night, but he's not going to get paid any more than.
Well, I think you can still hold incentives. I think there can still be incentives for fighters, but I think that it's important that there be some sort of established level, especially because the UFC is so big. And there's people that yell about monopolies. They don't understand economics at all if they think that that's a monopoly.
No.
But at the same time, it does make it harder to price yourself as a lower company when the UFC is doing what it does, and then they can do a bargain level price for the fighters coming in because it is the UFC. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a standard because of what I see that fighters have to pay out to get ready for fights and then what they're paid in the UFC.
Yeah.
I just feel like there could be something better as far as pay because it won't kill the UFC to give an extra, let's say, $6,000 to those base level guys.
Right.
I don't think it's going to mess anything up for guys like Anderson. I also don't think that if we see people who are doing one of the things I'd worry about if you do the union thing, guys like you said who are just kind of grinding it out on lay and pray. Yeah. And we see that anyway. And so I think it's a problem no matter what you do, whether you have the union or not, because there are people who know as long as I keep winning, they're not going to fire me. We saw it with Fitch for a long time, made a lot of money that way. If he had managed it better, he wouldn't be in the situation he's in.
Right. But, I mean, actually Dana White's kind of taking on, I think he's taking on, he's sick of these fighters that, are playing a game.
Right.
It's not a game. It is a game, and I hate the way the judges are kind of set up that we are
judging
forced
needs to just completely go.
We are forced to fight this way.
Right.
I would love the pride yellow cards and
absolutely
stalling, and I would love that. That'd be awesome.
I don't know why they haven't been able. I mean, I know it's all politics, so the answer is always because the commission hasn't blah blah blah. But it's weird to me that there hasn't been more of a push for yellow cards, or at least something like that.
Yeah.
And then that there hasn't been someone looking at how to make the rules just more clear on how it's done, because and I've talked about this before, so I'm sorry to anyone who's heard this 5 times now, but the rules when you read them, because I spent time as someone that does analytic linguistics, and I look at language pretty heavily, and the way that it's worded is so terribly done. It looks like somebody who it was their first year in law school, and they were trying to set something up, and it just didn't work well. Because the way they set up 10-10, which isn't ever used, 10-9, which shouldn't be involved in MMA, and 10-8 and 10-7, which aren't used at all, and there are a lot of situations where they could be, but then it creates draws, and then you got this really confusing ranking system.
Yeah.
If draws are everywhere, it's just it's all a mess. It's a terrible mess that they're not fixing. So that all needs to be figured out. But things like yellow cards could definitely help so that we don't have to worry about that stuff as much, because people will try to fight more.
Exactly.
One of the things I keep hearing about them talking about, though, is that they want to try to shorten the rounds, which is it's gonna be hard for me to watch the sport.
To 3-minute rounds?
Yeah, like 3-minute rounds.
Do 5 3-minute rounds?
Yeah, and that worries me.
Ooh.
I would rather a 10-minute round as the first round. I know that some people feel that can make it boring, but I'd rather see a real fight that appears boring to people that don't understand it, as opposed to just rock like.
The problem with
just do a
3-minute
line of
rounds
meth
is
and
the
run out there.
grappling. It's the grappling.
Which
you
I
don't
love.
have time to get grappling. I mean,
Right.
effective grappling off.
Right.
Unless you're Robert Drysdale.
Yeah, if you're somebody or like Vinny Margulies who can run out there and flying armbar you as a light heavyweight, like those are the guys that might be able to do it.
But hey, maybe that'll force them to step their jiu-jitsu game up too.
Yeah, well,
that's what they
it
want
could
to do.
create an evolution for sure. But the thing I always liked, and I talked about it last week, was like the first fight I ever saw and really sat down and watched was Sakuraba versus Royce Gracie. And if you think fights nowadays are boring when people are laying around, you'll probably hate that fight if you don't understand fighting. But what I saw is that it was real. That's a real fight. They were really sitting there trying to figure out how am I going to beat this man,
right?
Or torque this guy into submission. And it was two masters trying to figure it out. And so when they were sitting still, I wasn't bored. I was like, he's going to try to do that. Oh, he's setting this up. He's moving there.
Right.
He's moving his hips to the side. And then Sakuraba throwing Mongolian chops to the neck because he's Sakuraba, just to make it a little more exciting for everybody.
Yeah.
But those kind of fights I would rather see than kind of what we start to see in boxing, where it's about just getting your points and exploding at the right time and then just cruising.
Exactly. It's a game. It's not a fight. It's a game.
One of the things I hate about today's game that's being played is when people hear that clacker, they spam takedowns. Right. As soon as they hear the clacker, they shoot in because they figure that's going to give them the round. And the worst part is sometimes it does give them the round.
Right.
Even though with 10 seconds left, you're not doing anything with a takedown. Why are you getting points for it?
I wouldn't even score it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be scored, honestly.
Unless you knock him out in that 10 seconds, you take him down.
Well, yeah, if you're doing a random in on Fedor suplex in the last 10 seconds, I'll give you some points for that.
Yeah.
But if how they just get the one leg, they drag takedown on a single leg, and then that's it, and they win the round, and you know that you just know the judges are going to do it.
See, and for me, the clapper means it's time for Diego Sanchez. I was watching the last Diego, obviously, in
the
Gilbert.
Melendez.
My God. There's never been a fight with Diego where I'm just not on my feet screaming at the TV. Because Diego's been my favorite since The Ultimate Fighter,
really?
man. Yeah.
I talked about how I don't like Diego, but I love his fights.
He's insane.
I can't stand listening to him talk. I will watch him every single time.
I'll listen to him. That crazy bastard deserves it, man. I love him. Love him. And I was sitting with my friend. She's a casual fan. And she was like, "Oh, he sucks the first round." I was like, "Shut your mouth and watch this fight. You're gonna see something magic." And obviously, the fight went down in the last 10 seconds. I was like, "This will be the best 10 seconds of the fight right here."
Yeah.
And then that 10 seconds went, and yeah.
You know what? I loved watching the fight. Yeah, and I loved watching that fight. I loved what they did, and I had to. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I had to tip my hat to Melendez too, because he could have cruised that last round and felt like he just won it, and he did. He chose not to, which was awesome, and he almost paid for it. He almost got knocked out.
That uppercut was nasty.
But especially for his opponent like Diego, it's real nice to see someone who knows that he's winning and doesn't care.
Yeah.
He was still throwing wild. He was still trying to knock out Sanchez. He was doing whatever he could to win, and that's one of the things, no matter how much you like or dislike the Cesar Gracie camp and how they fight, at least they fight. They come out and they try to fight.
For the most part.
Okay, for the most part.
Most of them do.
Well, I see Leslie Smith is a good example of she's trying to fight.
Yeah, Leslie Smith is outstanding. Yeah,
I'll watch her fight.
Jake Shields doesn't really employ that into his.
I don't know what she.
He's just at the other side. He's at the other end of the spectrum.
Well, what I figure with him is that they just really needed another grappling guy, and so they just got him. But he's not the same ilk. He's not the same kind of guy. He's a jiu-jitsu guy, not a fighter. Is what I've always seen.
Yeah.
Is that he cares about jiu-jitsu.
He's got outstanding jiu-jitsu.
Oh, for sure. I'm not taking away from what he does, because even what he did with Maya, even though I thought he was playing points, still to be able to control, and he did try to pass with Maya a lot, which I thought was big, because a lot of people, when they try to pass on Maya, well, first of all, they know not to, because he's going to try to do something, but second of all, he stopped Maya from being able to do anything when he was trying to pass.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good.
I got to give him props for that. Yeah, Damon Maya's one of the best in the world.
Maya's all those guys, Shields and Maya. I love watching them, but I hate when I see that their fight's coming up, because I know the discussion that's about to happen, which is people say it's going to be boring, they're not going to do anything, because they don't understand it at all.
Right.
And it was actually far more exciting than I gave it credit for. I was worried that they were going to sit and jab each other like GSP does with people like Koscheck.
Yeah.
And luckily they didn't. They went to the ground and they did their thing.
Exactly.
So that was nice to see. But, yeah, he would be a good example at that Cesar camp that maybe doesn't do what the rest of them do. But I feel like he just doesn't have the tools, and maybe that's why. He just gets so into his jiu-jitsu game that he won't do the stand-up.
Maybe he forgets. I don't know. I mean, I go into a lot of fights, and I'm like, yeah, I really want to showcase my wrestling. I really, I'm okay. I'm not good at, I wouldn't say I'm good at anything. I'm a fighter. I'm kind of, I signed up to get punched in the face. I don't think there's some kind of neuron firing correctly in my brain. However, I think I'm okay at wrestling. And maybe I want to showcase wrestling, or I started out grappling. I started out doing 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu and playing rubber guard and playing this. I would really want to showcase that. I mean, because I think, damn it, I want people to see that I can grapple. And then I get in there and start fighting. And
your anger takes over?
I know, my anger doesn't. I just let it flow. I mean,
right.
The water flows standing up sometimes better than sitting down. And
yeah. See, I never have that problem because my ground game's so bad. I'm never going to try to show that, and if I'm on the ground, it's just me losing. That's all that's happening.
Cheers to you, man. I mean, I'm horrible everywhere. I don't even know why I'm fighting for this title.
Well, I had fast hands, and I could take a punch. I had enough, like, Scots-Irish in me that taking punches wasn't a problem. But
just Homer Simpson.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, yeah, I've talked about my first fight. Like, I just got beat up by a Kempo black belt. Just got beat up. I mean, bad, because I didn't have much else than hand speed. Right. That's what I had, and luckily a big, stupid Forrest Griffin head that can take a lot of punches, and that's what I could handle. But outside of that, I mean, my ground game was all based on, I hope you're a wrestler that doesn't know how to protect your neck, because that's my only shot. And outside of that, I'm in trouble. And I got to pretty much, like, push you off with a frog kick if I'm going to get back up.
Frog kick.
And that's about all I had. But yeah, I understand what you mean, though. I hear a lot of fighters talk about that they have a plan, and then as soon as they get in there, you just got to, with whatever you have to flow with. That's what you got to do.
I just listen to my coach, and if my coach tells me to keep it standing and do this and do that, I'm going to be his little video game controller and let him have a little fun with it.
There you go.
That's exactly how I feel.
That's what I started to turn into when I started incorporating those Boss Rutan workout thing where he calls out those numbers and you just got to do them. And then I started having to tell my training partner, just call those numbers because I'm having trouble. Like, he would tell me a combination that we had worked out the code for.
Yeah.
And I'd mix it up and I wouldn't get it. So I even told him to do the boss accent because it just is now just triggered in my brain as the thing I got to do. I look like a doofus, though, when I'm working out and, like, people, they just hear this random voice calling out numbers and I'm throwing ridiculous combinations.
Sometimes I got to do that, too. I'll be sparring and it's just not flowing, or I'm not pulling the trigger, and I just hear Jamie in the back of my head saying, "Go stupid," and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I had the trouble pulling the trigger. It is like that's one of the first obstacles I think most people have to deal with.
Is pulling the trigger.
Is remembering to pull the trigger because you learn all this stuff with mitts and you're hitting a bag.
Everybody looks good holding mitts.
Right.
Everybody
and
looks
then
good
all of a sudden in front of you is a person who's not staying there, and you forget to throw because you're trying to set it up. You're trying to get in the right spot.
Yeah.
I've been even talking to people at Syndicate and places like that that I go around to. If I see someone that they're always going on the same beat. Yeah. Like they're always 1, 2, 3, and then they throw their thing. 1, 2, 3, and then they throw another combination.
Yeah.
To get away from that, because once someone's moving around you, you can't get set, and that's when you start not throwing your hands, and you leave yourself out there, because you're going 1, oh he moved, 1, 2, oh he moved, and they don't get it going, and that's when they start getting tagged all day. Yeah. God help them if they're across from Mike Pyle, because he's just gonna light them up.
Right.
So it's no good. But so I wanted to ask you before I think we got another like 5 minutes or so.
Oh, okay.
But if you do go to Invicta or UFC, is there a person that you want to train with specifically out of that group of elite women that are around right now?
I got elite women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you just had a choice, let's say you could bring someone down.
I could train with anyone?
Yeah, they could come down here. So you already got the ladies you're working with now and the people you're working with now, but you could add one of the ladies who is currently out there.
Who would I train with if I could? Every day?
Yeah, just all day.
That's a tough one, man. Because, I mean... It's hard because you look at all these women and most of them are in your weight class.
Right.
And you don't want to make friends with people. I mean, you don't want to make people with friends in your weight class because what if you have to fight them someday?
Well, you got the one
fight my friends. I don't care. I'll fight my friends, but I don't want to. I don't want to have to come to that.
It's not a choice you want to make, right?
Yeah, I don't want to have to come to that.
Well, you got 115ers in Invicta and 105s that could probably help you with ground stuff or striking. I mean, you got like Joanne Calderwood out there. Yeah, honestly, if I could work with a lady on striking, I'd get Joanne right away.
Yeah?
I love her style because it's methodical. Mm-hmm. She's like the Terminator out there where she just walks forward. She's just going to punch you and kick you and elbow you. Like, that's all. She doesn't care what you're doing. Yeah. Like, she's busy trying to carve you up, essentially.
I don't know. I'd like to train. I'd love to train at Rufus Sport. And, I don't know. I don't think there's many females. I'd love to go to... I'd like to visit some other gyms. I'm really happy with my camp and who I got training.
But just for the experience of seeing the other gyms?
Yeah, I would like to, train out at Rufus Sport someday. I'm a huge Showtime Pettis fan, and Alan Belcher, their style of striking, sure. Is pretty. I'm not saying it's close to Genki Sudo, but it's creative.
Yeah, especially Showtime has that
there's
same
no limits,
creativity. Where
Belcher does too. Those Superman punches off the cage. That's kind of a. Using the cage effectively, using, right. Not just
using the environment,
going to the square box of 1-2 kick or,
right.
Whatever.
Is there somebody that you'd like to fight specifically? And I don't mean like out of spite or anything, but out of just that it would be fun or an honor to fight some of these women out there. Because some of them now have been established for a little while.
Right.
I know a lot of people might not know, like when we talk about Joanne Calderwood. Shame on you, first of all, for not knowing.
Who Joanne Calderwood is.
Dr. Neville. She'll carve you up. Right. She's a mean lady. And the nicest lady afterwards, which is always fun to see.
Exactly. I don't really want to fight anyone specifically. I obviously want to fight Jessica Zomchek in 4 weeks.
Right.
That's who I want to fight the most right now because she's hungry for something I'm hungry for, and we'll see, who shows up hungrier. And it's Thanksgiving, and that title's staying in Vegas.
Yeah, we do need to keep those titles in Vegas if we can, please.
That's honestly, that's been in my mind. That title's not going to leave Vegas. And I'm not going to make it a thing about Barry or anything else, but you know what? That lit a fire underneath me. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
That lit a fire underneath me, and I'm not saying he would have wanted it to go either way because he's a very impartial person, like good promoters are.
Right.
But I have a lot of Vegas pride, even though I just moved back here from February. I'm Vegas born and raised. I moved away when I was 10, and I've always wanted to come back. It's been my dream to come back. I finally found an opportunity to come back, and that's pretty much what my mind's at, is keeping that in Vegas. I know it's just an amateur title, and maybe it doesn't mean a lot, but I had a friend that passed away a few years ago that told me that I would be a champion if I could get down in weight that much, and she passed away, and this is kind of like a lot of things just clicking together, and I'm not going to go on some Manifest Destiny bullshit, but it's a fucking amateur belt, you know what I mean? There's people in my camp that are training for bigger things.
But it's a good step, right?
Yeah, it means the world to me right now. Right now, that means the world to me. I'm sure I'm not going to care about it. I mean, it's always going to hold a place in my heart a year or two from now.
Right.
But...
Well, it's an accolade's an accolade.
Exactly.
People who talk it down just haven't had one yet. That's their problem.
Yeah, well... Yeah, exactly. But no, I'm working on my striking. I'm doing a lot of sparring with Jessica Riccozzi, and that's keeping me real sharp, and I'm learning so much from her.
Right.
Outstanding training partner.
And so we mentioned it, or we touched on it real quick, but do you think you'll have at least one more amateur fight before you go pro?
I'm not sure. I might not. I mean, it's the end of the year, and I'm not going to take time off from training. I'm going to keep getting better, and keep improving everywhere. But after this fight, I'll definitely sit down with the people that are close to me and talk about some things. I turned 29 in February, so I know that's not old, but it's old in fight years.
We're on the same age, so we'll call it old. I feel old.
Dude. We're old, dude. Let's just... Yeah,
I keep telling people, but you're the first person in here who's mentioned a fighter that's from before the golden age of MMA, and that's every time.
I've been following it since I was in high school.
When I was talking, I think the last two times I've said that I'm starting to feel like that guy in the bar who talks about the Cleveland quarterback from the 70s.
Good old days.
Yeah, like the good old days when there weren't all these rules and guys were real tough, and it wasn't this BS like people getting poked in the eye crap.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, that's why it was tough seeing both Shayna and Roxanne lose because they are veterans. Jessica's my teammate and I love her to death and I want nothing but success for her. So I was extremely proud. I cried when she won. I mean, I'm a baby, man. I get more emotional for, you know, people that I train with their fights than my own. I don't give a shit about mine. Like, mine's whatever. Like, I'm worried about it too, but no, but at the same time, because I've watched Roxanne and Shayna fight each other. I've watched Roxanne, you know, get powerbombed by Sarah Kaufman. I've watched Shayna fight Cyborg, you know, who was a weight class above her, and you know, I watched Shayna pull off the first twister in MMA. I've watched a lot of these veterans, and a lot of people think that, oh, you're just hopping on the bandwagon. No, I've been following grappling for a long time, and
us old people got to keep everyone in check about who these people are, because I can't tell you how many people I've had to explain who both of those women are. Like, they don't know, and they're like, "You mean that lady that lost?" And I'm like, "No, shut up. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly.
You have to stop talking."
Yeah.
But I know that when I was younger, I was probably the same way about football players or baseball players. I'd be like, that guy who was terrible, because when you come in and you only have so much, you hear it with Kid Yamamoto, you hear it with Akiyama, who came into the UFC and just can't get a win.
I know, I felt so bad for him. I love his walkout song, man. That is so gangster.
He's just so much fun all around. And but he fell for the same pitfalls that everyone did, which is where he took on, first of all, he's Japanese, doesn't really cut weight.
Exactly.
Which
he was
kills
so
him.
Small. Yeah, he was so small for when he...
The problem is that they're not going to judge the fight like his fight with Shields. I thought he won.
Oh, he won that fight.
Yeah, because he was toying with him, essentially, and just taking some jabs to the face, but who cares?
I'm not saying that because I'm an Alan Belcher fan, but Alan Belcher won that fight.
Well, I think I don't believe in karma and stuff, but for anybody that does, if you watch those two fights, you go, oh, well, Akiyama clearly wasn't going to win the Shields fight because he got the Belcher fight, so that was the trade-off.
Probably.
But the poor guy just hasn't been able to put together, and I'm hoping that both ladies from Tuff, who've been around a while, I want them to be able to succeed at least once in the UFC so that people don't have that stupid stigma of that lady that came in one time and then she wasn't really any good because they didn't watch in 2005.
They've been putting their dues in before. Like, they've been putting their dues in for so long. I'm not saying they're entitled, because nobody's entitled to anything.
No, but you want to see it.
It's, survival of the fittest, and I'm all about, carpe diem, but, if nothing else, give Dana, if Dana has any kind of, I'm not saying marketing or business sense, but I mean, give them a UFC fight.
Well, if he has a soul, give both of them.
You know what? Fight. I heard Dana has a soul.
No, most things I've heard about him are nice.
Yeah,
and that's from people around here. If I go back home and I talk to people in California, they hate him because they don't know. They have no idea what's going on. They just don't like him because he is, loud.
Well, he's rich, powerful, and he doesn't give a fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but everybody I've heard around here likes him, but I'm with you, where I hope that if he has any possible way of making sure it happens, get both of them in there and fight each other.
Yeah.
Because both of them, I mean, I see Roxanne pretty regularly, and I see her working pretty hard to have the opportunity. So hopefully they get in there. And especially because, like you said, they've been putting in their dues, so just give them one time where they can be in front of all those people in that big level. Because I watched one of Roxanne's fights from 2005 a while ago, where she fought a girl named Howe, I think, Howe, and that was like way back when. They were both wearing like almost T-shirts. Like they didn't have the best clothing on. They had no sponsors.
Yeah.
And that was back when Roxanne was considered #1 in the world for women's, essentially. Like there was nobody else that was able to touch her. And so just to see her on the Tuff show and then people kind of writing her off because she got slammed. You get slammed, you get knocked out sometimes. It's just going to happen.
Listen, she took some bombs from Jessica.
Yeah.
I was wondering how she didn't get knocked out on her feet. I mean, Jessica was landing some pretty hard shots on her. That girl has a chin on her.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, both, and I'm partial to women's MMA because it does have more of the passion and just people that love the sport. Because you're starting to get more guys that just come in because they like the idea of the money and being a star.
Yeah.
On the men's side, it's not everybody.
All the time.
There's a lot of good fighters out there who just love the sport, like Sanchez, people like that who just don't care and they want to fight. But on the women's side, it's across the board. There's one person in there who is trying to be a star for anything. They just want to win and show that they can do it. And I think it makes for better fights. I dare anyone to watch an Invicta card and be bored.
Man, I need to introduce you to my friend Jimmy. He literally said that same thing like 2 days ago when we were discussing things. And he's like, oh, who would you rather, if you had a chance, who would you rather sign for Invicta or World Series of Fighting, and where would you go? And I was like, well, that's really not up for debate because I don't really have any of those opportunities right now. He's like, well, you should go to Invicta because there's never a boring card.
There really is.
And he's not speaking, it's the truth.
He's not telling tales out of school. That place always has good fights. And it's because they are smart enough not to try to do one every month. Like, they space it out. It's every 3 to 4 months so they can put great fights together every time.
Yeah.
Which is fun to watch. But I honestly haven't been bored yet. And there's UFC shows that I'll skip or that I just can't see. But I mark the calendar for Invicta shows because they are always fun to watch. Also, I may or may not have a crush on Joanne Calderwood, but that's
I haven't heard that name at all this hour. Who's that? I've never heard of her.
Yeah, well, between her and Rose and Leslie Smith, honestly, she threw over 600 punches in her last fight, or 600 strikes. Like, that's
pretty
insane.
Gangster. That's gangster.
And in 3 rounds. It wasn't like she had a 5-rounder, so I don't even know how she did it. And at the end, she wasn't tired. She was ready to go more, and the other lady was, like, heaving and couldn't stand up.
Sure she was, yeah.
I love the whole thing. Honestly, I'm the mama bird of all MMA in Las Vegas now. We're like, I know all the fighters. I get really scared for everyone now.
Well, except for Dries.
I can't handle it. No, I get scared for all. Yeah, I can't get into Dries. I can't find any of you. And Fight Capital. Anyone that's listening to this from either of those gyms.
We're just hiding and training all the time.
I need you guys to get... Yeah,
hey, we're not like other gyms where we sit around and shoot the shit. We get in, we get done, and we take care of business.
You guys got the efficiency down, but that's a problem for people like me trying to drive around. But anyone who's from Drysdale or Fight Capital, get in touch with Bootsy on Facebook because I need to talk to all of you. All of you. Every single one. And then I will root for you and be very scared when you fight. And and I'll turn away and I'll cry sometimes. Because I get too, it's like you said, when it's other people fighting,
man, I can't.
You get super emotional about it.
I can't even handle it. I can't watch. Like, it's stupid. I'm watching the show, and the fight's already transpired, and I'm texting the people I know on the show, and I'm like, I feel really stupid texting you saying good luck because the fight's already transpired, and I'm still got the butterflies, and I still want to cry because I don't know if you win or lose, and you can't tell me either way. Damn it.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for you.
It's tough. Honestly, I get the front side seats for the Tuff-N-Uff shows, and I can't. I walk around. I'm pacing in the back.
Oh, man.
I can't do it. I can't sit there and watch it because I'm too afraid.
You better watch me.
I know both people. Well, like for years, I don't know her. So I can watch it, and I can be like, oh, I hope that you win because I don't know her, and screw her. And then, but when it's 2 people, like in the last show, it was Steve Mikowski who came in here recently and talked. Yeah. And then Shane Tinling, who's from Syndicate, and I knew both of them already. Yeah. So the whole time, it's like I can't do 100% of the time. I'm afraid for the person, so I just stalk around like a weird creep at the show. Everyone's like, "Who is this guy walking around everywhere?" And I'm sitting there like muttering to myself. I can't look while the fight's going on. It's a real bad scene. Yeah. It looks bad. I look like a crack addict walking around. I need my fix.
Yeah, people can't see me with that.
All right, we're running over time here, so we got to close it up. But hopefully we can get in touch with you after the fights and we can talk about it.
For sure.
We'll kill another hour just rambling. We'll just do a whole show on old fighters that we liked.
We'll do an old school segment.
I've been wanting to do one, honestly, because
talk about Pride and Dream.
Pride Days, Dream, Deep, all that stuff. Yep. We'll go way into it. We'll talk about Shuto. We'll talk.
My goodness.
I need to talk about Tamura at some point. Kiyoshi Tamura, who used to just beat the crap out of everybody, and nobody knows who he is. Drives me crazy. But we'll talk about that next time. So anyway, thank you all for listening. We'll be back on Monday. Oh, God, I got to do another show on Monday.
Oh, man.
And this has been Fight Grind Radio on the Las Vegas Tribune. You've been listening to Bootsy and Shannon Reid, who will be fighting November 29th at the Tuff-N-Uff show. She'll be going for that 145 belt, so be sure to wish her luck and to be at the show.
Shout out.
Oh, yeah, please shout out.
My bad.